This is a video I've been wanting to put together for a little while, and the purpose of this one really is to help folks understand all the various kinds of sales structures that are out there, right? So for a lot of folks who are maybe new to sales, they don't really understand all the nuances and various ways that sales organizations can be set up. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting, and we'll fill in this whole map here. At the top, right, we want to think about where the stuff, whether it's manufactured goods, and like this is supposed to be gears, by the way, representing industry, or hardware, software in the computer sense, or actual manufacturing. But this is where the stuff is produced. So somewhere somebody is actually making the widget or doing the work. All the way down at the end, sorry, it's cut off a little bit, is the actual end user, the person or company or individual that's going to actually use the product. So the question really is, how does a manufacturer, producer, developer, software manufacturer, what have you, bring their products and services to the end user? How do they get there? Well, the first thing to understand is that there are two major sides of the puzzle. There's the direct side, which refers to a direct relationship between the manufacturer, producer, and the end user. Typically, the easiest way to think about that is from a contracting standpoint. Who is signing the contract? Who owns the contract? Who does the end user connect with? So direct represents all the different ways that a manufacturer, producer can directly interact with an end user with really no middleman, no middle person. Indirect represents all the ways that a manufacturer or producer can leverage other companies, other individuals, other channels, other infrastructure to give them greater reach. So generally on the direct side, what we're looking for is a more personal relationship, more direct relationship and feedback. On the channel side, typically what you're going for is scale. So I think it'll make sense as we actually start to roll through some of this. Let's start on the direct side, right? What most people are familiar with, I should say, when they think about sales is outside sales, right? You've got your salesperson, always, of course, symbolized by your man in the hat and the little briefcase here, right? There's your salesperson out in the field, meeting with customers, doing presentations, getting on a plane, etc. The close relative of outside sales, of course, is inside sales. And we could spend probably a whole conversation just on inside and outside sales. However, generally speaking, inside sales represents those folks that are not necessarily getting on a plane, right? Typically lower dollar value. With the advent of SaaS solutions, things that are delivered as a service versus a physical product, and on a per user per month basis, inside sales is vastly more efficient. Typically, when we're thinking about both inside and outside sales, the question you want to ask is, well, how are they organized? So you have companies that think about the world in terms of territory, region. You may have heard companies talk about east, west, mid, central, south, etc. It could also be named states, things like geography. I used to work for a large company that literally had, about a dozen sales reps, outside sales reps in the Chicago area. Maybe they had 20 of them, and they were all divided by zip codes and things like that. Some companies also organize their sales teams by vertical, which is a fancy way of saying industry, right? So you could go after financial services or healthcare or things like that. And then, of course, there's the ever popular named account, wherein sales reps really focus on specific named accounts, and they choose the accounts, they go after them, etc. We'll come back to the direct side of the house in a minute, but I want to spend a little bit of time on the indirect. On the indirect side, one of the top layers, one of the top layers of the indirect side, of the channel side, is what we're actually going to call a distributor. And there's a lot of different confusing names, but a distributor is not only somebody who sells the manufacturer's product, but typically, and that's the reason I did this little house, typically it's somebody who carries inventory, right? Now this might sound a little strange, but think about it in a real simple way. If you go to the mall and you go to one of those stores that sell cell phone cases, right? That's a retail shop. It's not necessarily owned by the manufacturer because they carry lots of different brands, and the inventory in that store belongs to them. So the sales relationship is between the manufacturer and the distributor, and then the distributor sells to the end user, right? So in the technology world, hardware, data hardware, things like that, storage hardware, It can be very valuable for manufacturers to be able to sell to distributors in bulk, be able to account for that revenue and let the distributor take care of the rest. A reseller is also someone who has a direct relationship with the manufacturer or producer and then sells downstream. But oftentimes a reseller is somebody we characterize as not carrying inventory, right? Somebody who doesn't necessarily have their own inventory. They're simply selling it on behalf of somebody else. They will have the contractual relationship, but they don't have vast sums of inventory. And there can be a lot of gray area between these two things. As we move down the chain, there's another type of reseller, and they're actually called a value-added reseller. And the idea is a value-added reseller is bundling the manufacturer's products typically with other goods and services. When you see, for example, software with very complex implementation or integration characteristics, a lot of times the value-added reseller will be the one not only selling to the end user but providing all the services. In some cases, the services may dwarf the actual product, right? It sort of depends on how they're structured. Coming back over here to the direct side of the house, when we talk about outside sales and inside sales, we really talk about folks who, at least in theory, can manage end-to-end interactions, right? They might be setting the appointments, taking the appointments, they might be doing the full sequence of selling. A lot of times, to make this more efficient, what you will have is another type of sales team that is referred to as, these days it's demand generation. It used to be called lead generation, but demand generation is a big one. And these are almost always inside folks, and these are folks that leverage the phone and email to set appointments, typically for the outside and inside salespeople. You might ask, well, why would you have demand gen? If you have somebody inside, right? Because they're already on the phone. And the answer is, if you've got a very technical product or something very complex, you may need very high dollar folks or more expensive folks to do the actual selling work, and it may make sense to offload some of the easier work. This box here, I actually have reserved for the area of selling which I actually tend to heap the most scorn on. Development. I got to check my spelling here. But the idea is, when people talk about a business development role, that's become much more generalized, and you see people with business development in the resume. Traditionally, business development was very specifically intended for individuals who built, these kind of relationships, who were responsible for going out and developing the partnerships and the alliances and the things like that. So business development has really turned into a homogenous term, but it really wasn't intended to be. So when somebody says business development, they see business development in their resume. I don't think of them as a salesperson, but I think of somebody who develops partnerships and kind of fun stuff like that. There's another box down here which really isn't part of the direct selling, it's more on the indirect side, but I have it here for a reason, and I'll tell you why. When we talked about somebody as a referral partner, right? For me, a referral partner is somebody who's out there in the marketplace and identifying customers, but they neither manage the transaction nor own the relationship with the manufacturer or seller. What they actually do is they pass leads this way, right? And then they basically get a percentage commission back. Better do that in green, right? Because it's money. So that's the way we think about that. Is that referral partners are folks that provide potential customers, clients to the sales organization. They're not really part of the system, but they get often paid on the side in what's called a referral agreement. Moving back over to the indirect side, where I drew the bag here. This is something that you don't see as much. Independent rep, often called a manufacturer's rep. I'm going to run out of space here, but the idea is, back in the day, there were a lot of organizations that carried multiple manufacturers and producers' products, and they were out in the field selling to a particular a customer set. Not necessarily like the Fuller Brush salesman or the Cutco knives folks. Those are typically directly employed by the manufacturer. But in the sporting industry, you see a lot of this where, for example, you're selling into bike shops or outdoor shops, etc. And you're not going to make money selling one type of water bottle or one type of camping tent, but as a manufacturer's rep, you basically carry multiple lines, and that's how you make your money, but your concentration is actually going to the retailer, which is, right, a reseller. We remember that. Last but not least, I think I got my boxes filled out here. We're gonna just flag this here because this is actually both in the internet marketing world and the direct world, actually an increasingly important sales channel, right? And we call them an affiliate. Affiliate is somebody who has, in effect, their own sales channel. They're not typically a reseller, although they might be, and they certainly don't carry the manufacturer's product, but often they represent the product as their own. So one thing to think about is if you walk into Costco, on your way out, you see all these different offers for insurance and vacations, etc. It's branded as Costco Vacations. In fact, though, Costco doesn't own a travel agency, and Costco has nothing, in their portfolio related to travel, but they have a very specific relationship, discount level and specific packages that they've already negotiated with the manufacturer or the producer for their customers, and they've rebranded it. So a lot of times, we'll think of affiliate relationships as what we call white label, where there's a product or service that's been rebranded under the affiliate, etc. And then, of course, we're going to put the IM for internet marketers. These days, there's a tremendous amount of selling going on with folks who have large mailing lists or large, followings, and they basically want to be able to access those audience. So I hope this is helpful. Feel free to ask questions. This is a very complex world, and I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. And of course, there are exceptions to every rule, and people will use different names. But generally, regardless of the name, I hope this gives you a good idea of how the selling world fits together. So maybe when you're building your sales organization or when you're going after your next sales job, you get a little bit of sense of both what you're looking for and what you're dealing with. So thanks so much, and please do leave your comments right down there in the space below.